Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear us. Please mute your microphones so we don't hear background noises. We start in a moment. Well, we can start now, actually. It's 2:30. Right. Hopefully everybody can see the slides that I'm sharing at the moment. And thank you for joining today. We are already in the fourth episode of our webinar series presented by Perspective Brussels and the PlanningMatters platform on non-Atlantic. As always, we are recording the conversation and the episode will be available later to watch again on our YouTube channel from Perspective. We even created a special playlist so you can find all the previous episodes in this playlist. We will also share the slides to the connected participants after the webinar. Just one housekeeping rules. As I said at the beginning, please keep your microphones muted and your camera off if you don't want to be visible on screen during the recording. That's for participants. For speakers, please keep your camera on. Don't hesitate to use the chat for your questions, including for the speakers. We will be moderating from our side throughout the episode, and we will be taking your questions to the speakers during the Q&A. My name is Cécile. I am your host today, together with my colleagues Alfredo and Nico. We all work at Perspective Brussels, the Brussels Capital Region Planning Agency. We are also coordinator of the PlanningMatters platform. And today we'll have an interesting session with presentations from Bratislava, from Prague, and from Brussels. And for those who join for the first time, I will maybe quickly give you some information about PlanningMatters and this webinar series. About PlanningMatters, it's the unique European platform for exchanges and discussions between urban planning agencies and departments from European cities. And our goal is to bring all of us together to cooperate and exchange at the European level, build some common messages on the European stage, and promote the role of urban planning in Europe. The platform has been creating this year in 2025, after the Belgian presidency of the EU on urban matters that we coordinated from Perspective in 2024. The platform is organized around 4 main activities. So of course, the webinars like the one of today, and more generally, exchange of knowledge on our practices or our jobs, and also peer learning activities. We do a bit of advocacy at EU level. So for instance, lately, together with other European networks active on urban matters, we responded to the EU consultation on the EU agenda for cities with messages tailored to the situation of urban planners, like the importance for this future policy agenda for cities to take into account spatial planning and the consequences of EU legislations and policies on land use. That was one thing we did. We also do job shadowing. So some colleagues have been traveling around in Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, to see how these cities are organized and the types of projects they are working on, and how these projects can also nurture our own. The platform facilitates these exchanges thanks to the growing database that we have of contacts in different urban planning departments and agencies throughout Europe. So all interested planning agencies, urban development departments of cities, urban networks are welcome to join PlanningMatters and contribute to the platform. So if you want more information, you can ask me or write to us after this webinar. So on the webinars, we decided to focus this year on non-Atlantic and the different strategies to achieve it. And this, as I said, is the 4th gathering in a series of 6. The first episode took place in February and gave an overview of what is non-Atlantic and the approaches in different European countries to achieve this goal. During the second episode, we talked about compact cities as a possible model for urban planning and how urban densification can contribute to the objective of non-Atlantic. We had different case studies at different scales of interventions from Helsinki and Berlin. And last month, we discussed greening strategies to preserve open spaces inside and around dense urban environments with case studies in Turin and Brussels also. 2 examples pretty different from the scale, but also from the type of strategy implemented to prevent land take. If you want to replay the videos or share it with your colleagues, you can go, as I said, on the YouTube channel where we have uploaded all the episodes. But today, We will focus on urban recycling and the reuse of spaces and buildings to reduce urban sprawl, with examples from Bratislava, from Prague, and from Brussels. You will hear about different approaches, dependent on the urban context, of course, but we will also see how history plays a role in the strategies we can adopt and the stages of development or redevelopment we are in, and how this impacts planning as well. So reuse brings many questions. Some of them we will try to address in this webinar, like the one you see on the slide. What are the technical, financial, etc. Challenges and opportunities for reuse and repurposing? Does it request paradigm shift from urban planners, architects, and design teams, etc.? So for our first presentation, we go to Bratislava with Jana Ilčíková, who is urban planner at Spatial Planning section of the Metropolitan Institute of Bratislava. Jana is currently working in a team focused on preparing spatial planning concepts and analysis. And the task of the team is to develop spatial planning documents for the new Metropolitan City Development Plan of Bratislava. Jana is involved in the topic of brownfields within the city of Bratislava, working on ongoing strategic document like the concept for brownfield development, she will explain, which is part of a larger strategy for reuse. So don't hesitate to type your questions during her presentation, which will be followed by a reaction from colleagues from Prague. And Jana, I give you now the floor and the control of the presentation.
Thank you very much. I will try to take the control, but right now the presentation is reloading. So sorry for...
I see that you have the control, so normally it should work.
Yeah, normally yes, but it seems that I need to reload and it doesn't.
Do you want me to move the slides then?
Yeah, maybe it's gonna be better.
Okay,
because...
so let's go. That's you. And that's the first slide.
Yeah, but I still cannot see the slides.
Oh.
Okay, but first of all, thank you for the opportunity to represent examples from Bratislava. I would like to, you can probably move the slide, even I cannot see which one it is.
Now we are with the figures. Yeah.
So you can see the comparison of Bratislava and Prague, because also because of our current history, which we are sharing, and also because of the following reaction from the IPR Prague later on. Bratislava has okay, increase the volume.
Yes, if you speak a bit louder.
Yeah, sure.
Is there a problem with the presentation? Because
I cannot reload it, for example, so I again see just the...
Okay, so there seems to be some people with issues with the presentation, but not everyone. So we'll keep going.
Now I can see it, so maybe it is, but
Takes
I don't know if the rest can see it. So we have a... Yes, okay. We have this comparison here. Bratislava has just 367 kilometers square. So as far for the capital city is not very large. The population is less than 500,000 inhabitants. So it makes Bratislava that is not very density. We have quite low density per kilometer square, and it's divided to 17 municipal parts. And according to current prognosis, we do not expect to have more than 520,000 inhabitants in 2050. But we still need more or less around 120,000 flats until this year. Prague has also a larger scale. You can see almost 500 kilometer squares and around 900,000 inhabitants more than Bratislava. Also is denser and have 57 municipal parts. And also they are expecting more the increase of inhabitants in 2050. But they have need of flats until 2050, around 20,000, 220,000 flats. So this was just a background for the audience that you can compare these two cities. You can move on, please. For the context, Bratislava as a capital city has many problems, I would say. It's mainly because of the communistic history and later very wild development in 90s. So Bratislava is dealing with many challenges like urban sprawl, which is leading to consumption and overburdening city systems. We have modernist heritage, which you can see on the second picture, like really huge building blocks. Also problems with housing affordability in the new developments and some neglected spaces. It's mainly because of the complicated ownership after communism, when everything was public and now it's everything almost private. But we will talk about it a little bit later. At the other slide, please. I work for the organization called MEP. It's a Metropolitan Institute of Bratislava, and it's a think tank focused on architecture, urban planning, participation, and strategic development. And we are trying to build a comprehensive and conceptual solution for many issues, urban issues, and also on different scales. And we are contributory organization under the city of Bratislava. That means that usually we are receiving tasks from the city of Bratislava, and our main mission is to improve the quality of life in the city. Next, please. This is the favorite slide of our director, Petra Marker, and it's explaining very well the role of our organization, and it's mainly improving and doing physical transformation in the city, which you can feel by design or piloting and testing different solutions for public spaces, but also a psychological transformation as a mediator in public discussions, doing communication of city project, education and participation, for example, via very known project City for Kids. So really MEP is working on very different scales in the city. Next, please. Now I would like to start with our experience with mapping of brownfields. We have started this mapping in 2016, and the methodology was based on the methodology EU Cabernet, and we had to somehow for spatial planning to decide what brownfields will be on the scale of spatial planning, and brownfields are underused sites of more than 0.5 hectares abandoned for at least 2 years. So we are following this methodology. Next. In 2019, we started with the urban study brownfields. And later we upgraded it in 2022. This on the right side, you can see the map of brownfields in Bratislava, and we have 580 hectares of brownfield sites in the city. Also, 60% of them is in build-up area, and the rest are brownfields for example, in the forests or in different sides of the city. The problem of brownfields in the city is that they are mostly owned by private subjects. Almost 50% of them it's privately owned, and the city of Bratislava owns more or less 12%. This means that we need very focused urban policy for building projects and the strategy for their redevelopment. Also, the part of the study was that some were identified for change of the valid development plan. Next, please. As you saw on the previous slide, we have some sites where are many brownfield sites located, and this is the example where we had 7 brownfield sites on 43 hectares. It's called the area is called Mlynské nivy, and because of interest of the owners, we decided to do an urban study and later proceeded to the change of the valid city development plan. The aim of this study was aligning interests and seeing win-win solutions among the city and the developers. And the proposal is bringing principles of a compact, walkable neighborhood. We can, yeah, this is the small background how it all started. It started in 2021 when there was a city organized a call for changes of the valid plan to to increase housing affordability. There were 128 participants, but only 92 were allowed to go to move to the next step of this call. And 16 owners were just in the area of Mlynské nivy. That's why the city decided to do a urban study which were designed by MIP, by Metropolitan Institute. The goal was to coordinate all these stakeholders, the 16 owners, but also take care of the public interests in this area. In April 2024, there was a final stage of the urban study, which was also publicly presented, and there was a stakeholder consultation. And right now we are in the stage of proposal for changes of the valid city development plan. It's an ongoing legal process, which is quite complicated, and the proposal has not been approved yet because it has to be approved by city government. So we haven't finished this process yet. You can, yeah. Just to describe you the situation of this area, that as I was I was telling you, we have just a really little amount of brownfields which are owned by the city, and this was also this example because only 15% of the whole area of 139 hectares was owned by the city, and there are mostly communications and roads owned by the city. The rest was privately owned. So it was very important to develop a strategy which will be win-win for all stakeholders. That's why the city developed a new contribution methodology for the public infrastructure. And the contribution may take the form of a financial input linked to a specific activity, or a non-financial contribution in the form of key public assets. These key public assets in this specific area were 2 parks, tram-serve boulevard, and 1 school. So these were like the most important public infrastructures. And also there was designed a strategic tool for the greenery, which is called Eco Index. We were testing it on the area of Mlinské Nivy, but later it will be applied in the new metropolitan plan. But right now it's under the testing phase. But it was very new tool in a study in Mlinské Nivy. You can. So this is the final proposal. It's based mainly on the connected green infrastructure. That's why we use the tool Eco Index, and also the transportation was quite limited in this area. That's why there was designed the tram line going through the area, and mostly urban planning is based on the blocks distributing different functions around the whole area. We can, yeah. This is the next project which will continue. It's a logical continuation of the area because the area of Mlinské Nivy is just next to it, and we are planning a new urban regeneration inspired by Hamburg city in our winter harbor. Right now, my colleagues are building principles and guidelines for the future development of this area with respect for industrial heritage and genius loci of the site. There is a very important topic of flood protection because it's just next to the river Danube. Next slide, please. Here I shared some documents, mostly are unfortunately in Slovak, but some are map portals on the geoportal, so the audience can check it later. Next slide, please. And this is just my final slide to thank you for the opportunity, and I am looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Jana. Apologies for the ones who had issues seeing the presentation. I hope we more or less solved the issue. Before we take some questions, we want to and microphones. Thank you. Before we take some questions, we wanted to give the opportunity for another city to react to the presentation in the case of Bratislava. And the city is Prague, as I announced in the beginning, because it's very close in a geographical sense, but also in a historical sense. And that's also why Jana presented some figures so we can see both cities and their context. Quite similar, but the approach that they took to brownfield redevelopment is quite different, as well as the stage they are in. So I would like to invite Lucy Para from the Prague Institute of Planning and Development to explain quickly the situation in Prague and if we can really compare both cases. To introduce, Lucy works as a senior strategy and city cooperation specialist at Prague IPR. She has been with the Institute for over 6 years now, currently working for the head of the Department of City Development. And Lucy, hopefully this time it works, you can take control of the presentation and the slides.
Great. Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, Jana, for your presentation about Bratislava. I only have a few slides as a reaction to what we've just heard. I will concentrate on one area, which is called Bubny Zátory, and it's located quite in the heart of the city of Prague. But I would like to excuse my colleague, Jan Krtička. You can see his name here. You have also his contact here. He's the head of our Office of New Neighborhoods Development. So this is mainly his topic, but he's currently taking part in a meeting that concentrates on this specific area of Bubny Zátory. So we decided it was more important for him to be there and decide on what's going to really happen in this area rather than present to you here today. But if you have any questions, you can also contact him directly afterwards. So we prepared this presentation or this reaction together. This is the map of Prague, and everything you see in red are brownfields or transformation areas. What you see in pink here is the city center and the historically protected World Heritage UNESCO site. So you can see Bubny Zátory here. It's very, very close to the city center. And we have 1, 2, 3 other brownfields that are quite close as well, and that are also currently under construction or under discussions to change the land use plan and start construction soon. So one of them is already under construction. It's this one. Basically, all of the main ones that are close to the city center are formal railways, and so this is why, since the change of railway use has changed in the past century, we have these huge empty areas in the city center. What Jana mentioned in Bratislava is also an issue here in Prague. So this is the Bubny Zátory area. It's an area that's it's destined to welcome 25,000 inhabitants and 29,000 jobs. So it's quite big, but we have a very diverse ownership structure. This is really all the owners in all the different colors here. I put it in yellow, red, and green for you to see better. Everything that's red is owned by the state, but it's mostly the lines you see are railways. So we will take away the former railways where the trains just stood, but there is still a functioning. These two lines are still functioning railways connected to Prague main station. So we need to work with this for the future. And all you see in green is privately owned. Because since Jana said it, in the 90s, there was a big push from everything publicly owned to everything privately owned. So the city and the state sold most of the land in this brownfield, but also in other brownfields in the city to private investors and developers. So most of the land is owned by private investors. What the city owns is basically public spaces and some space destined to welcome 2 schools and another big project I will talk about a bit later on. but this plays an important role in the process and in why it takes such a long time. We put a brief timeline here to show that this project, this area, has been discussed basically since the Velvet Revolution that happened in 1989. So the first international workshop on this area, what should we do with it? What should we do with this brownfield, happened already in 1991. But since it's so complicated in the land ownership structure, the city decided with the new zoning plan in 1999 to block all this area to further construction. So and then we had several studies, but all of them were rejected, and nothing basically happened till a few years ago, where our institute, the Prague Institute of Planning and Development, which also depends on the city, it's quite similar to Metropolitan Institute in Bratislava. We launched an international competition in 2020, organized it, and then there is a new master plan for the area, which was created and came from this international competition by Thomas Müller and Ivan Reimann Architekten. And so right now, based on this master plan, so there are discussions underway, but to make changes to the land use plan to make this construction of this new neighborhood possible. And it's currently underway, and there should be changes linked. So the changes that will happen in the urban land use plan will be linked to a planning contract with the developers, similar to what Jana said in Bratislava. So the private developers will then contribute to financing public spaces, schools, and other necessary infrastructure. What you can see from this photo, this neighborhood is also quite close to the river, in the meander of the river. In 2002, we had huge flooding, and all of this area you see on this picture was underwater. So it's also linked to another project that's next to it with a huge flooding park. And we have also microclimate modulation happening here, because since it's quite close to the city center, we don't want to contribute to the heat island that Prague city center already is. And all of this area has one big project that should also attract people to this new neighborhood and connect so the already existing neighborhoods. And it's the Prague Vltava Philharmonic, which should, so it's a project by BIG, Bjarke Ingels Group. It's already also under discussion and should be built by 2033. The idea of this new Philharmonic is to welcome people 24/7, and not only concerts, but it will also be a bit like the Helsinki Public Library, but concentrated around music. So all of the municipal library, musical topics, everything that concerns music will move to this area. There will be walkable roofs and a lot of public space for people to use all the time. And it will also reconnect the neighborhood to the river, because right now there is a big road next to the river, which will be hidden underneath, and people will be able to access the river again from this new neighborhood. So that was only a short overview of what's happening in Prague. If you want to know a bit more, we have one page on our website about this area that's in English, and about the Philharmonic, more information in English here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for this interesting reaction or comparison between both of your case. I'm asking now, Nico, do you have a questions for our speakers related to their presentations and local
Yes.
situations?
I can see in our chat we have a question from Michael Rosenberger. I guess it's to both of you cities. So how well is the offer to rezone land to a higher value use received by the private market? If any of you guys could share your thoughts on that.
I'm not sure I understood well. How well is
Me
the
neither.
offer to rezone?
I can try to explain my question. It seems that there is an awful lot of brownfield land in both of your cities, and the main strategy seems to be willing to change the development plan to a much higher use, to a much more dense and higher quality environment, and which creates a lot of value and therefore should attract developers or investment, seems to be the case. And my question is, how is that going? Is that this strategy picked up by market participants? Are there many people interested to develop these significant amounts of land that seems to be available in your cities?
I will maybe start. There is a lot of interest by private sector to develop these areas. Also, most of the land has been in the hands of these private investors for over 20 years now. So they are very eager to start building something. And in Prague, it's a bit like in Bratislava. We now have a methodology for private sector contributions when we develop big brownfield areas. And in the beginning, it was not very well perceived by the private sector that they would have to contribute something more than what they were investing. But now it's part of the way of doing things. So I would say it's quite well perceived by the private sector, and if it allows them to start building, then they are quite okay to sign the planning agreements with the city and the city district that is concerned by the given area.
I completely agree with this answer. So
but this would mean that in the foreseeable future, much of the land that has been shown on your maps, these brownfield mappings, that would be used and be transformed rather quickly if it's going to plan, and if it's happening fast. Because both views have a significant amount of residential areas that you wanted to add within the next couple of decades, and I think 120,000 units in Bratislava and 200,000 in Prague is a lot of flats, and so this land could be quickly absorbed by new projects.
Probably yes, but of course these brownfields have many problems. For example, the environmental burdens, or also some ownership issues within the sites. But most of them are very well located and also close to the public infrastructure. So the location of the brownfields is probably very interesting also for the developers.
I might just add that in Prague, what you see now is that we have had recently in the past 2 months, I think 3 or 4 planning contracts between private investors and the city hall were signed for different areas in the city. But this is happening now, but you have seen the timeline. We have been discussing this for the past 30, 35 years. So we have hopes that now it might be a bit quicker, but for the moment it's quite a difficult process also because we have our urban plan that dates back to 1999 and is not really flexible and doesn't really correspond to what a 21st century city would need. So every change needs a change of the urban plan. So the procedures are quite long. We are currently working on what we call the metropolitan plan, which is the new spatial plan for Prague, and we hope to have it approved by next year or the year after that. And this should hopefully make things smoother and also a bit more predictable for private investors. So we hope things will go more smoothly because we really have a very high demand on housing. What you see here with the 220,000 flat estimate for 2050 is what you don't see is that we already have a 90,000 deficit as of now, as of this year. We need to build roughly 10,000 flats per year, but we already have a 90,000 flats deficit here in Prague. We did a comparative study of different European cities 2 years ago, and we are working on an update this year. And this study shows that Prague is, with Barcelona, the most expensive city for buying a flat, but it's also, and by far, the most expensive to rent a flat compared to how much people earn here. So this is a very pressing issue for us. So we hope to build more. Well, one of the things is we hope to build more in the upcoming years to satisfy the demand we have.
Thank you. If I may, we may go on with our presentation, then hopefully we will have some time left to take some extra questions. So Nico was suggesting a visit to Brussels, so I suggest we go now to Brussels with our colleague Jérôme Cockrols from the team of the Bouwmeester. I will also take back control of the slides here. Where is what slide? Ooh. Here. So, Jérôme is architect in the team of the Brussels Bouwmeester. I was explaining to you, the master architect in the Brussels capital region. I will explain also what it means and what the Bouwmeester does in a moment. And in the BMA team, is involved in projects related to reuse. So recently contributed to a publication called The Architecture of Reuse in Brussels, which highlights the architecture of circular projects in Brussels, and we will hear about it in more details during his presentation. You will also understand in his presentation how the urban context can influence the approach we take to reuse of spaces and buildings, but also materials. In Brussels, we don't have many industrial brownfields left, also because another challenge we have is to preserve industrial activities within the region, but we do have a lot of office buildings. So on that, please, Jérôme, floor is yours. I will just.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. As told, I'm from the organization called BMA, or Bouwmeester met Architect, which translates to Master Architects. So as suggested in the name, my presentation will focus less on spatial planning, but more on the building and level of architecture. But maybe first I will explain a little bit what BMA is and what we do. It's always easier to explain what we do by starting to explain what BMA is not. So we're not the head of the planning administration. We're not deciding on permits. We're not a city architect. We're not the consultant, and we're certainly not a politician. So what is BMA? BMA is a government-appointed official working from an independent position in charge of improving the design quality of urban development projects in Brussels. So let's go back to a few of these words in the definition. Improving the design quality, it means promoting, stimulating, pushing, or putting on the agenda the spatial quality. It's broader than only architecture. It's also about sustainability, about public space, about infrastructure, and even about social justice. And not only public projects, but also we work also with private developers. Then second, from an independent position, we don't belong to a political party. We also don't belong to a particular administration. So our position is neutral and independent. And we work in the Brussels capital region. So it's only this part of Belgium that we work in, only in the region of Brussels. In order to achieve our mission, we have a number of tools that we use. First one is the design competition. I will come back to it in the next slides. The second one is research by design. With research by design, we want to talk about spatial quality as early as possible in the process of projects. Usually clients or promoters come to us with an Excel file and a cost calculation. With research by design helps us to translate these numbers into spatial scenarios and to test them, taking into account context and to adapt them if necessary. So the drawing becomes part of the conversation and the negotiation with a client or with a developer. Then the design review for large projects above 5,000 square meters, it's mandatory to ask a design review from our team before submitting for building permission. And then the last one is the BMA label. This is to fund unsolicited proposals from citizens or from design practices. And we fund their research. So every year BMA looks for 3 fresh ideas to be developed. But the main tool is still the design competition. So it's a fair and transparent way of awarding contracts, public as well as private. And we see a lot of competitions on our desk. So there's one competition every work week on average. So sometimes a bit more, sometimes it's a bit less. As told before, what we also do is agenda setting. We're actively pushing for new thematics or thematics that we think could help improve the spatial quality of the city. And here you can see a few of those. The productive city deals with questions to how to integrate small-scale industries in a contemporary city instead of removing them to the outskirts of the city. Cooperative housing is pushing for a non-speculative way of living, or adaptive reuse deals with questions of how to transform existing buildings into new programs instead of demolishing and rebuilding them. And this leads me to the theme of the webinar, circularity in the built environments. Maybe to start off, today in Brussels, circularity and reuse in architecture have become something of buzzwords. If we're standing where we are now in Brussels, it's thanks to a collective called Autres. This collective was founded in 2005 as a cooperative design practice and has been pushing for reuse of materials in Brussels for the last 2 decades. But the question is reuse, or by extension circularity, in architecture really an innovation? Actually, in the past, reusing materials was a common practice. Many old buildings were built using parts from earlier structures. For instance, on the image here, you can see a palace built in the 16th century. In the early 20th century, they decided to build a railway connection and to dismantle the building. If you look closely at the picture, I don't know if it's possible to zoom, but there's a panel saying "Facade for sale." So it shows that already at that time, reuse was something they did in building industry. So materials from this palace were carefully dismantled, sorted, and put for sale. It shows that it's only with the rise of the industrialization of the building sector that we started working more and more with new materials, and building with new materials became common practice because they were cheaper, easier, and faster to work with. And so they became more attractive than reused materials. The only problem with working with new materials is that they create an enormous amount of waste, not only during the production of the materials, but also when a building is being demolished. And so the question is, how can we not demolish? Sometimes it's easy to not demolish because building has heritage value, or simply because we are attached to the building. But in Brussels, there's countless ordinary anonymous buildings, often office buildings that after COVID, for instance, stand empty, or because they are discarded because they no longer meet the regulations for office standards today. The parallel was already made by Cécile, but we could say our office is the new brownfields. In Brussels, it's certainly the case. But should we just tear those buildings down and build new ones instead, or do they deserve a second life? To open this conversation, we organized a public debate in 2017 with the name "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" Brussels was once known for tearing down its buildings and replacing them with new ones. So much that we even coined a word for it, Brusselisation. But the mindsets are shifting quickly. This project shown in the image, it's a 10-minute walk from the city center, is a good example. Back in 2015, BMA, together with a private developer, organized a architecture competition where the existing building was to be demolished and replaced by a new one. Today, tearing this building down would be unthinkable. If we look at the carbon footprint of a building over its life cycle, we see that more than half of the CO2 emissions take place right at the start when the building is constructed. This CO2 is called embodied carbon. It's the carbon necessary to extract, process, manufacture the resources into building materials and to transport them onto the construction sites. On the other hand, a bit less than half is consumed during the rest of its lifetime. This is called operational carbon. If we compare scenarios of renovation with demolishing and constructing a new building, we see that it's always more advantageous to renovate than to build new in terms of CO2 emission. If in the past we preserved buildings because we were attached to them or they had heritage value, today even the most banal buildings hold a new kind of value, the value of the embodied energy stored in their materials. It's the energy we save by not demolishing them. And when we look at all the projects that come across our desk, we see that there's no single way to be circular. In fact, over the past few years, many practitioners in Brussels, architects, planners, public services, developers, have all been actively experimenting with circular principles, and each in their own way. For instance, here, the project Sinneke is experimenting with material reuse. This one, BC Materials, experiments with creation of new materials, biosource or geosource materials. They use excavated earth from Brussels construction sites to create bricks. Or Mobilis, the project Mobilis has a strategy of oversizing the building in order to anticipate future adaptation of the building to host new programs. Skipped. And another one is matchmaking building and program in order to avoid demolition. Often the decision to demolish a building stems from a mismatch between the program and the building. Not every building is fit to host a certain program. So that's why this matchmaking becomes important. Or just adaptive reuse of the structure of the building, such as this one, Zin by 51 and 4E. So these were all examples of pioneering projects. The question is, are we ready to mainstream this approach and mainstream the practice of circularity in built environments? The answer to the question is yes and no. So in Brussels, we're hopefully soon going to adapt the new building codes. Where demolition was possible without justification in the past, this logic will be reversed once this new building code will be approved. It will require proof through a life cycle assessment that demolition is the only viable option for the building. On the other hand, reuse of materials, it's more difficult to impose a minimum share of reused material in a project. We're not there yet. The main challenge lies in how to measure reuse. Do we measure by mass, by volume, or by economic value? Each method will lead to different outcomes, so we need to agree on a way to measure the amount of reuse. But it's not only regulations. The change in regulation that I told about is already anticipated, even if not approved. A lot of developers already start to anticipate this change. And here we can see that in the last year alone, we worked together with developers to transform over 400,000 square meters of offices into housing. This project shows City Forward. It's 300,000 square meters, changing more than 20 buildings at the heart of the European quarter in the EU quarter. So changing the rules is one step, but we also need to rewire the construction industry. That means rethinking the logistic chain of materials. For example, if we dismantle a building and we want to reuse its materials, storage in between the moment of dismantling and the bringing to the new construction site, storage in between becomes a critical link. And so it's necessary to have this infrastructure. It also requires developing entirely new disciplines. So people who can dismantle a building instead of demolish a building, or people who create material inventories. And also developing tools that help us to reuse materials. Next to new regulations and rethinking the supply chains and the disciplines, we also need to adapt the way we conceive architecture process, architecture projects, and the classic flow of projects. So in circular architecture, the end results of a project depends on the availability of materials. In this example that I showed earlier, the architects didn't know which windows would be available when applying for the building permission. In submitted documents, the indicative position and outline of the windows are shown with dotted lines, so it calls also for a degree of flexibility on the part of the authorities. It's only in a later stage of the project that the choice was made between the available windows on the reused market. And here you can see the end results for this building. In contrast, it's also an option to choose to work with an available material from the beginning. Here, the equestrian center that you can see in the picture was dismantled and was reused in a waste management park in Brussels. an interesting lesson from this project is that a material has its certification and structural integrity only until the moment it is dismantled. Once it's taken apart, the whole insurance process must start over. So it's quite peculiar, since reused materials in the past were actually valued precisely because they had already proven that they were durable over time and exposure to weather and climate. And then maybe a last question: does circular architecture have its own language? So there's this kind of fantasy that circular architecture has a certain specific aesthetic that is visible in its architectural expression. But is it true? If we look at the Zinneke project I already showed, it's clearly made visible. It's actually showcased. Each window is unique, and the reused elements are very visible. But there is also this project, the multi-tower, where reused materials are integrated into a more corporate aesthetic. They're not as visible. You only see them if you look very carefully. And actually, it was the developer's trademark. They wanted to position themselves as a sustainable player, but they also wanted to appeal to more corporate clients. So to answer the question, it depends on what the intention of the architect or the client is. You can choose to show it or choose to integrate it into a certain architectural expression. And to end with a word on circular architecture, it starts from what is already there, from the qualities of what is found and what already exists. It's a very contextual approach, and it stands opposite to starting a project from scratch, from a blank page. What the architecture does is not writing a whole book, but only a next chapter to a story that is already ongoing. If you want to know more about the projects, I invite you to go to our website and download The Architecture of Reuse in Brussels. It's a publication we published at the end of last year. It's available through our website. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat for Jérôme, Nico. I saw that the questions to Bratislava and Prague were answered by the...
Yes, there was quite some
Lucy and Jana.
activity in the chat. We just have a quick question from our part regarding a recent event here in our neighborhood. So thank you, Jérôme. So we just finished a European funded project on the challenges of the transition towards a circular built environment, the ASSET project, and the final conference was last 21st of May. And this project particularly looked at the spatial dimensions of circular economy and the need for a multi-scale approach to circularity, including micro-regional scale. In this case of Brussels, you know, the Euro Delta, the area spanning from Holland all the way to Lille, with Brussels in the middle. And how do you think we can facilitate this jump in scale, and what advantages does it bring to be able to build more circular in our cities? Jérôme, quickly.
Well, I think in the project shown in the presentation, they are experiments. But they also show that there's no one-size-fits-all solution in order to get to a circular built environment. So it's about tackling a lot of different things at the same time. But to scale up, I think a lot of what's necessary to scale up is to share. So to share knowledge, to build capacity on a larger scale. For me, it's an essential part of the mainstreaming process and the scale up. But harmonized legislation, if possible on European level, would help. So clear agreements on how to measure circularity, on how to calculate life cycle costs and carbon footprints of materials and buildings. This would be, I think, or how to certify reused materials. This would be a very interesting step forward. So legislation on harmonized legislation on the Euro Delta, for instance. But also sharing of expertise. I think common training programs or educational initiatives would accelerate the scale up. Today, only a limited amount of number of contractors work in circular practices. With specific education programs, it could help to mainstream these practices. And also another thing is I think building a shared inventories and databases on a larger territory, I think everyone would benefit from more available options of reuse materials, and instead of having to dig for the material, if they're available on a shared database, that would be a very interesting step forward as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Cécile, I'll let you conclude.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all your questions and activities in the chat as well, and reactions on the presentations. And thank you for being with us today for this 4th episode of the program. Thank you to the speakers, of course, and apologies for the slight delay, but it was very interesting presentations and interesting intake from the 3 of you. Just a couple of more info before we close. So we will be back next month on the 25th of June for the 5th episode of our series. And this time we will focus on tools and data for non-Atlantic. So maybe it will be a more practical episode, more technical as well. We will have two presentations, one again from Brussels, because as part of the process of amending our regional land use plan, Perspective has been asked to draw up an inventory of the actual occupancy of land and buildings throughout the region. It's a very ambitious project that in the longer term should provide the region with a territorial monitoring system to track changes in land use and the built environment as well. But this project raises many questions in terms of available data, the methodology we use, and ultimately which policy we pursue. So we'll have an interesting conversation there with our colleagues during that episode. And the second presentation would be an introduction of a new European funded project called SPADES, working with pilot regions and cities to identify and test spatial planning and soil assessment tools in order to conserve soil resources and combat land take. So hopefully many of you will be interested also in this episode and this conversation. You can already register using the link on the slide, which we will be sharing it as well later.